7 spine-chilling true tales exposed with sinister rain sounds. Discover the haunted secrets within. Sarah sat at her kitchen table, fingers shaking around a half-empty cup of coffee. Outside, the storm roared, flooding the neighborhood with its deafening cacophony. Shadows flickered in corners, the darkness breathing life into her fears. A loud knock reverberated through her darkened home, echoing against the walls like a death knell. She swallowed her heart, dismissing the sound as her overtired mind playing tricks. But then it came again, 3 sharp raps against the door. Her pulse quickened, cold sweat prickling her skin. Just the wind, she muttered, but her gut twisted. Outside, the familiar streets of her suburban haven lay shrouded in an unusual malevolence. The rain pelted the roof like a million tiny drummers summoning dread. Every shadow felt alive, shifting just beyond her periphery. She had worked the night shift, a grueling 12-hour stretch at the hospital, but this wasn't fatigue. This was something else, something darker. She glanced at the photos of her family on the wall, her late husband's radiant smile now a painful reminder. Hadn't he always said they'd be safe here? Yet her neighbor, once warm and inviting, now shifted suspiciously when they crossed paths. Hidden hostility danced in his eyes. Her heart fluttered with panic as she noticed more strange occurrences. Family photos she could have sworn were in one spot now lay crumpled in a drawer, faces shrouded in shadows. As she investigated those unearthed memories, she stumbled upon news clippings about her husband. Stories of charity drives entwined with whispers of a darker past, fraud hidden beneath a cheerful exterior. The unease settled deeper. "Mommy!" Her daughter's voice cried from the hallway, a fragile whisper breaking the stillness. Sarah's breath hitched, and her protective instincts kicked in. She hurried to her kids, but the thunder outside seemed to laugh at her fallibility. Her neighbors grew colder with every passing day. Their familiar smiles masked discomfort, glances surfacing fear, like they were harboring secrets of their own, secrets that could swallow her whole. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Nerves tingling, Sarah clutched her phone. A pit of dread settled in her stomach as she noticed her children's eyes darting to the window, shadows flitting just beyond. "Mommy, it's scary," her younger son whispered, freezing her in place. The air was thick with intuition, something lurking just out of sight, watching. Suddenly, another knock shattered the eerie silence, and the front door rattled. "Stay here," she whispered, creeping toward the entryway. The drama unfolded around her, heart racing as shadows morphed into figures almost tangible. She felt the weight of countless eyes boring into her back, and the air was alive with menace. "I see you, Sarah," the voice said, curling around her spine like a viper. Her breath stalled, and dread paralyzed her. She was not just a mother anymore, but prey in a game she didn't understand. The storm outside raged, and with the pounding rain, she knew one thing for certain: whatever awaited her was right outside, cloaked in darkness and intent. Would she confront the twisted web threatening her family, or would the night consume her whole? Sarah inhaled sharply, the voice echoing in her mind like an unwelcome whisper. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to wake from this nightmare. "This isn't real," she muttered, forcing herself forward. Each step felt agonizingly slow, the ancient floorboards creaking beneath her weight, a warning from the house itself. The shadows outside twisted into grotesque shapes, flickering in the dim light. She pressed her forehead against the cool door, heart hammering against her ribs like a frantic bird trapped in a cage. What if it wasn't just the storm that made her feel this way? What if it was something or someone waiting for the right moment? "Mommy, please." Her son's voice trembled, pulling her back from the edge of despair. A surge of resolve surged through her. She turned, desperate to maintain her grip on reality, her eyes searching. I'm coming." As she raced to her kids, a powerful voice cut through the thunder. Sarah. Let me in. This time, it was deep and low, vibrating through the walls, a sinister command just for her. The thunder clapped in response, washing the sound away like a tidal wave. Panic tightened its grip around her chest, squeezing the air from her lungs. She veered into the living room. Her 2 children huddled under a pile of blankets, their wide eyes reflecting pure terror. The images in their wide, innocent faces fueled her fear. What's wrong? She strained to sound brave, but dread colored her voice. There's a shadow, her daughter started, her small finger pointing toward the window, trembling like a leaf in the wind. Just outside, a darkness shifted, swirling in rhythm with the storm. It was more than the absence of light, it was alive, pulsating, like it had its own heartbeat. Rebecca's soft whimper echoed in the room, drawing Sarah's attention back to her kids. They needed her. But she was terrified. What do we do, Mommy? Her son's voice was even smaller than usual. We'll lock the doors. I'll protect you, she promised, forcing her feet to move. Each threshold she crossed felt like an act of defiance against the invisible enemy. She reached for the locks, adrenaline sharpening her senses, their cold metal biting into her skin. The storm surged outside, embodying her rising panic. As she bolted the last lock, another loud knock splintered the air. This time, there was a pause, a terrible calm after the storm of chaos. Then, softly, a voice returned. I am coming for you, Sarah. Chills ripped through her. Those words weren't just a threat, they was an assurance the dark figure lurking outside was in control. In the chaos, she nearly missed the sound. A soft scrape at the window, a finger tracing the glass as though it were a lover reaching longingly. Steeling herself, she turned. The shadow at the window darkened, morphing into a face only she could see, a sickly grin, impossibly wide, stretching across its features, eyes glimmering with the promise of doom. This was simply a game, and she knew that there was no escaping, it was only a matter of time. As the figure began to press against the window, she felt a curdling wave of inevitability wash over her. Let us go to the basement, she whispered urgently, now. The kids leaped up, and as they moved toward the door, she glanced back. The eyes outside were unblinking and relentless. What awaited her behind those heavy, stormy curtains of rain? The world outside had become a sinister theater, and she was the lead actress in this horror unfolding, and just as they reached the stairs, the lights flickered and then went out, plunging them into complete darkness. The threat intensified, the unseen enemy inching closer. Mommy? Her daughter's voice cracked, a harsh reminder that any shred of safety had vanished into the void. Suddenly, a low, menacing laugh echoed, an acknowledgement of the fear the darkness held over her. This game wasn't just beginning, it was coming to a climax. What happens when a mother's love is tested against the darkest of demons? Somebody would have to pay the price, and death was always waiting nearby. The basement door creaked open, releasing a gust of damp, musty air that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. She ushered her children through the threshold, the stale darkness swallowing them as they descended into the depths of the house. The rickety wooden stairs groaned underfoot, a sound that felt monstrous in the silence. Sarah's heart raced in time with their echoing footsteps, a morbid counterpoint to the malevolent dark above. Stay close, hold my hand, she instructed, her voice quaking but firm as she gripped Rebecca's small palm. The ground felt uneven beneath her feet, littered with forgotten memories, old boxes, scattered toys, and the vague outline of a forgotten past, the playroom that had turned into a pit of horrors. They reached the bottom, the oppressive weight of the silence enveloping them like a shroud. The only light came from her phone, a feeble beam cutting through the blackness, revealing more haunting shadows that bashed together in the corners. The air felt thick, charged with an unshakable tension that wrapped itself around Sarah's throat, stifling her breath. Mommy, I'm scared. Her son's whisper broke through the silence, rippling through Sarah like a chill wind. I know. It's okay. Just stay close. She held them both tighter, almost as if her love could act as a shield against whatever lurked beyond their temporary sanctuary. The laughter returned, cruel and mocking, slithering through the cracks of the basement walls. It twisted around her, whispering that the shadow was back, creeping closer, that it was never really gone. Fear coiled around her heart, squeezing tighter. "Let us find something to keep us safe," Sarah said, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. She fumbled through the darkness, sweeping her phone light across old furniture, an axe, an old baseball bat, nothing she felt would truly protect them from the darkness that howled outside. Mommy Rebecca's voice quivered again, a playing string that pulled on Sarah's nerves. "What if it gets in here?" Sarah faltered. "It's okay. We just need to be quiet." A crash echoed from above, a sound like splintering wood breaking through the fragile calm. It was followed by the unmistakable sound of something heavy dragging across the floor, a relentless progression that daunted Sarah's resolve. Time stretched, every heartbeat a reminder of the danger pacing above them, stalking and waiting. Suddenly, the lights flickered, a faulty bulb above. The beam of her phone flickered out. Dark panic gripped her soul. They were entirely engulfed by an endless void. "Hold on to each other," she shouted, though she could hardly hear herself over the thunderstorm's rage. She felt the kids' small, quaking forms at her sides. They clung to her like frightened shadows. It was all she had, this fragile connection, and then came the whisper, low and intimate, like fingers slithering across the nape of her neck, slipping into her subconscious. "Sarah." An icy sweat broke on her skin. There was no escape. The figure had come for her children. "Kids, listen to me. I need you to be very quiet," she breathed, battling her instincts telling her to flee. In the oppressive silence that followed, the dragging sound ceased. Thundering footsteps stomped above them, a dreadful weight once more commanding the hollow ground, thudding like a heartbeat, steady, inevitable. "Mommy?" Her son's voice quivered louder now, snatched by desperation. Sure, but her voice didn't carry the assurance it needed. Her gut twisted as a sharp clattering resounded from the stairs, her heart sinking deeper than the silence. The confirming sound of a metal tool clanging down the steps. The children gasped, horror spreading across their faces, and in that moment, dread seeped into every corner of the basement. The enemy was no longer just a shadow, it was something tangible, creeping ever closer. "Stay here," Sarah ordered, suddenly desperate now as she tried to peer into the thickening darkness. She took a step forward, compelled by instinct, by dread, drawn in by a force greater than her assumptions. Something morbidly alive lurked just inches from her. "What have you done, Sarah?" The murmured question echoed through the darkness, sending icy daggers down her spine. A shiver gripped her throat as a deadly silence followed. What if it knew her secrets, the darkness? What would it reveal? And just as she felt her breath quickening to panic, a cold hand brushed against her cheek. Her skin prickled beneath the caress of that icy hand, sending waves of terror coursing through her veins. Sarah froze, heart hammering violently in her chest. She turned slowly, forcing her legs to move, dragging herself away from that chilling contact, every instinct screaming at her to run. But where could she go? The basement felt like a trap, each shadow a lurking enemy. "Mommy!" cried Daniel, his voice quivering, filled with despair. "Shh! Stay close!" she hissed through gritted teeth, unable to mask her panic. She could feel something watching, malevolent, hungry. With trembling hands, she fumbled for her phone, praying that the light would return. But the screen remained dark, flashing an insidious low battery warning before it finally gave up the ghost. The basement was once again cast into pitch blackness, that tangible fear swelling with it.no. No. No. She couldn't let them see her fear. It was a poison she couldn't afford to share. "Mommy, I'm scared," Daniel whimpered again. Her mind raced, memories flooding back, whispers of the past, tales told by others. How could she protect them when she felt so small, so powerless? The clattering noise returned, louder now, like metal gnashing against wood. A hammer? A tool? It scraped and echoed around them, mocking her desperation. And then silence. The stillness had weight, pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. Every muscle in her body tightened, a plea for movement trapped beneath dread. Instinctively, she reached for Rebecca's small hand again, squeezing it tight enough to make sure she was still there. "Mommy, it's too quiet, what if it left?" Rebecca whispered, voice barely a tremor. Sarah's response stuck in her throat, choking her. What if it had left? What if it was waiting for them to make a single sound? A single mistake? But the moment broke as the familiar laughter echoed in the suffocating dark. It danced around her, silky and sinister, dragging its claws through every fiber of her being. She could feel it, that taunting presence, the very embodiment of her fears. It took form with each chuckle, creeping ever closer until it felt like a suffocating fog. "Can it see us, Mommy?" she heard her son murmur, terrified. "No, just stay quiet." The words tasted hollow as they tumbled from her mouth, a desperate attempt at comfort laced with a feeble hope. But as she whispered, another thud resonated above them. This was different, heavy, deliberate. The unmistakable sound of footfalls, right above them, pacing. The figure was toying with them, giving them a taste of the horror that awaited. A rush of wind swept through, scattering dust as the silence cracked like ice. It tugged at her hair, a chilling caress that sent fear spiraling through her core. The laughter morphed into a distorted voice, something familiar yet utterly monstrous. "Sarah, you thought you could hide?" The words chewed at her resolve. Panic ignited within her. It knew her name. It knew. "What do you want?" she yelled, voice raw, echoing back as if mocking her desperation. Then came a rustling sound, like something slithering across the floor. The children clutched her tighter, their little bodies trembling against hers. She could feel a frantic pulse beneath her skin as dread coursed through the air, thick with malevolence. "Please, just leave us alone," Sarah shouted desperately, her voice brimming with false bravado. "Leave? Oh no, Sarah. You brought me here." "Now we play." The words dripped with malicious glee, filling the air with another echo of mocking laughter. And without warning, the darkness pushed in, the weight of it closing in on them. As shadows swirled and morphed, she caught a glimpse of something, a figure standing just beyond the reach of her memory, a blur of horror from her own past, grotesque and eager. In the chaos of freezing terror, a sudden thought hit her. What if it wasn't just a specter of dread? What if it was something they had invited, something that stemmed from their past? Her breath quickened as she turned to her children, fear twisting in the pit of her stomach. "We have to go now." But in that final, desperate plea, the floor beneath them began to tremble, as if the very foundation of the house was shuddering in response to their panic. The walls felt alive, wailing in agony, as if the house itself had absorbed the darkness over the years, waiting for the right moments, waiting for them. And then came the whisper once more, closer now, a threat woven into the fabric of the shadows. "Your secrets shall be our plaything." As the basement echoed with that sinister promise, Sarah felt the walls close in, an overwhelming sense of inevitability crashing down on her. They were not alone, not anymore. What had she unleashed? No longer could she ignore the truth. The next moments would determine everything, but who would survive the reckoning? The ground shook under them, a low rumble that seemed to crawl through the very bones of the house. Panic knotted in Sarah's gut as the laughter echoed again, but this time it was joined by a cacophony of whispers, 1,000 voices murmuring secrets meant only for her ears. The walls shivered, a shuddering intimacy surrounding her family, as if the house breathed with animosity. "Mommy." Daniel's voice quivered, drowning in terror, yet even he seemed to sense the urgency. "Not now, Daniel. Stay still," she hissed, holding on to him and Rebecca as though they could anchor each other to sanity. A piercing shriek exploded from the stairs, shattering the silence, and she instinctively shielded her children. The air thickened, infected with dread, as something heavier than darkness pressed in on them. The shadows pooled at their feet, twisting, forming shapes that danced just outside her line of sight. Then she saw it, a fleeting shadow, blacker than the night, hovering near the stairs. It was closer than before, ready to collide with her heart. Splotches of unseen malice dripped from its form, gleaming in the slivers of light that barely reached into the abyss. "Mommy, I don't want to play anymore," Rebecca whimpered, eyes wide and glassy, reflecting an unspoken horror. "Neither do I, sweetie, but we can't give up. Not yet. We have to find a way out," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. She could barely breathe, each word a labor against the suffocating atmosphere. They backed further into an alcove where the shadows seemed less dense, but the oppressive darkness was palpable. It sprayed over them like a deadly mist, wrapping around her, squeezing the breath from her lungs. The laughter intensified, echoing, holding a swarm of secrets from a life once lived her life. "What are you?" Sarah felt the words lift from her throat, a question tinged with desperation. "You know," Sarah, the voice coiled around her like a serpent, dripping with ancient malice. "I'm everything you buried, everything you tried to forget, and now your children will know too." Her throat constricted, nausea swirling within. It was the past clawing back to the surface. Memories of mistakes made, of choices that trapped her in this desolate hell. The cracks in her resolve widened, threatening to swallow her whole. "No. Stay away from them," she shrieked, defiance ringing in the air even as it trembled with fear. The shadow lunged, a blot of darkness tearing at her, but it recoiled as if struck. For a brief moment, Sarah felt a strange sense of empowerment. Had she forced it back, or just stalled for time? "Mommy." Daniel clutched her leg. "We can't keep hiding. We need to fight it." The flicker of bravery ignited in her heart. Daniel was right. Fighting was the only way to break free from the chains of their past. "Okay, we need to move, now," she whispered fiercely. With her pulse racing in her ears, Sarah led the way, almost dragging the children along with her. As they stumbled across the basement's floor, the shadows reached out, ominous fingers trailing over her arms like fragmented memories trying to pull her back. "Where are we going?" Rebecca asked, fear etched across her delicate features. "To find the light," Sarah replied, though the hope in her voice faltered, weakened by uncertainty. They ascended the stairs, each step a confrontation with the darkness that wanted to possess them. The impossibly thick atmosphere of dread followed, snapping at their heels like a hound eager to claim its prey. As they emerged onto the ground floor, the flickering light from the hallway cast bones of shadow that danced menacingly. A sudden crash erupted from the living room. Glass shattered like scattered hopes. "Mommy. Please." Daniel's scream sliced through the gathering storm of sound. Time stretched as she glanced at the doorway, that familiar threshold where nightmares thrummed. "We have to go in." But the moment they crossed into that chaos, Sarah's heart sank. A sight beyond comprehension awaited them, twisted forms and forgotten faces wrapped in despair. It dawned on her, her family faced not just the monster, but the very horrors from her past. "Sarah, it's time to remember." The voice of the darkness resonated, echoing through every fiber of her being. With her heart pounding, Sarah screamed, "No. You won't take my children." But as her defiance hung in the air, she realized another truth: her past was more than a memory, it was alive, ready to reclaim them all. Outside the battered walls, a flash of light illuminated the room, flickering as if answering her fear. But would it be an escape, or the end? Each breath grew heavier as the entity whispered promises of reclaiming what was inherently hers, what awaited them in the shadows. Fear danced between them and their future. Sarah's heart pounded against her chest, each thought a frantic plea for survival. The grotesque forms surrounding her took on familiar shapes, faces she had tried so desperately to forget. Andrew, her childhood friend, twisted in agony, mouth agape as if screaming but soundless, a muted terror etched into his features. The sight disturbed her more than the lurking darkness. "Mommy. Please." Daniel's voice trembled again, a haunting echo of dread more primal than the horrors bathed in shadows. "Shoo," she hissed. "We have to keep moving." But where? The suffocating presence of the living room felt like a trap, the walls whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. The shadows were hungry, circling closer, their laughter growing louder. They fed off her children's fear, whipping it into a tornado of terror. Please, don't let them take us," Rebecca whimpered, her voice a fragile thread unraveling rapidly. "Stay close," Sarah commanded, grasping the kids' hands tight, shivering under the weight of her memories. Every thought screamed at her to turn back, to hide, but they couldn't escape through fear. They had to confront the monster. With shaky breaths, they approached the flickering light in the far corner, an illusory beacon that seemed alive with its own pulse. It felt almost warm, contrasting the icy grip of despair wrapping around them. "Mom? What's happening?" Daniel asked, his innocence piercing through the darkness like a raw knife, bringing tears to her eyes. I don't know. But we'll find a way." But her voice sounded weak, barely a whisper under the cacophony stitched into the fabric of the room. Suddenly, the light flickered more violently, as if in response to her uncertainty. The shadows recoiled momentarily, a brief surrender that gave her a glimmer of hope. "Let us stick together. On 3, we run towards it," she urged, bolstered by the children's silent courage. 1, 2, 3. They surged forward, heartbeats synchronized, but just as they neared the light, a wall of darkness erupted upwards, thunderous and alive. A scream tore from her throat, primal and anguished, as the darkness enveloped them once more. In that moment, it became impossible to tell where she ended and the darkness began. "No!" Sarah shouted, wrestling against the invisible chains. The shadows filled her lungs like suffocating smoke. "Mommy! Help!" Daniel cried, his small voice cracking, pulling her back to reality. It sharpened her resolve. "I will not let you take my family," she screamed, rallying her energy for a final push. Echoes of her past twisted through her mind, pushing her forward. Images of a childhood marred by loss and regret flared before her, but woven within were threads of strength. There was light in her memory, there was love. "Remember us," the shadows hissed, the voice now softer, inviting. It slithered into her soul, threatening to corrupt her resolve. "No." The word burst forth, sharper this time. "You do not own me." A sudden burst of warmth erupted from her heart, igniting to life the light she had yearned for. Her memories transformed into a shield, illuminating the encroaching darkness. The shadows screeched with rage as they were pushed back, turning their form like sand under overwhelming force. She could feel the pull from the faces of the past, their whispers turning to wails of despair. "Mommy, I see it." "The door," Daniel shouted, pointing. "Run." They bolted, darting through the receding shadows, hearts racing as they neared the threshold where the darkness struggled to follow. But as they reached for the door, a blackened hand shot out, grasping at the air, a final attempt to drag them back into the abyss. "Remember, Sarah, everything you love will pay the price." The warning hung heavy in the air, resonating with a truth she feared more than anything: the past always returns. And just as her fingers brushed the doorknob, the world around them spiraled into inky chaos. Would they escape, or would they forever remain trapped, haunted by ghosts that never faded? Outside the house, an unsettling calm wrapped the night, as if waiting for their next move. But what lay beyond the door? Hope or horror? Only time would unravel the truth. As Sarah's fingers grazed the cold metal of the doorknob, a jolt of fear shot through her. The darkness behind them writhing, it felt alive and vicious, eager to take back what it lost. She hesitated, breath caught in her throat as shadows coiled around her ankles like serpents, tightening their grip. "Mommy." Daniel's voice trembled, frightened eyes wide, reflecting the terror that consumed the room. Rebecca clutched his arm as though he were her only anchor. "No. We can't stop. We need to." Then the shadows surged forward, a rush of black fury that devoured sound and light. Just when they thought they might drown in it, a spark erupted within her chest. It surged upward, a hot blaze of defiance fighting against the consuming cold. "Let go!" she screamed, the words forming a battle cry. With all her strength, she twisted the doorknob and yanked the door open, light spilling out like a flood. The black claws of fear clawed at her one last time, but the brilliance engulfed them, weakening their grasp. They stumbled through the threshold, arms flailing, but as soon as they were on the other side, the door slammed shut, a thunderous finality echoing in their ears. Panting, Sarah looked around. They were outside. But the world was eerily still. The house loomed behind them, dark and brooding, as though it were alive and aware of their escape. What just happened?" Rebecca gasped, her voice quivering. I don't know, Sarah said, eyes darting around. But we can't rest. We need to keep moving. The road before them stretched out, shrouded in an unnatural fog that seemed to swallow the ground. Each step felt weighted, as if the shadows were still reaching for them, trying to pull them back into the abyss. Sarah glanced back at the house, a pang of dread clawing at her gut. It looked just as it did before, still and quiet. But was it truly behind them? Would they never be free? Or had it merely retreated to bide its time? Mommy? Daniel's voice broke through her worry, soft and scared. What if it comes back? What if it finds us? It won't, Sarah said, though her voice wavered slightly. We just need to stick together. Find help. The chill in the air intensified, biting at their skin, making every breath a labor. They walked with urgency, shadows flickering at the edges of their vision. But then, a rustle broke the silence, a low whispering that burrowed under Sarah's skin. Did you hear that? Rebecca said, eyes wide, scanning the darkening forest. It's just the wind, Sarah reassured, though it sounded more like a question. But with every passing moment, the whispers grew louder, a multitude of voices merging into one chilling cry. With each step, the weight of the night pressed down harder, turning the road into quagmire. Holding them back, they came upon a fork in the road, marked by an ancient sign, half erased by time. One path was lined with thorny branches, veiling secrets beneath. The other glimmered with an ethereal warmth, promising safety, a deceptive invitation that felt too good to be true. What if we go this way? Daniel pointed, eyes filled with yearning for the light. No. Sarah barked, too harshly. We can't trust that, we need to be careful. But the shadows throbbed behind them. She could feel their gaze, watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. Mommy, I'm so scared, Rebecca whimpered. Stick close to me, Sarah urged, determination gathering in her voice. We can't turn back. She glanced at Daniel and Rebecca, their faces pale and anxious, and felt her own heart racing again. Did they really escape, or was this just a momentary reprieve? Suddenly, the wind shifted, carrying a familiar voice, a soft, lilting tune that wrapped around their ears like a comforting embrace. Yet the chill in the air screamed warning. Don't listen. Sarah shouted, clamping her hands over her ears. But Daniel stood frozen, eyes glazed as the melody tugged at his heart. Mommy, it's beautiful, run. In that moment, she saw the shadows darting closer, waiting to reclaim their prize. The melody morphed into a cacophony of sinister laughter, echoing through the trees. Run! She screamed again, seizing her children's wrists, pulling them along. What lay ahead, the light or the dark? The forest thickened, and the laughter echoed louder, chilling their bones. Shadows began to stretch like fingers clawing toward them as they raced into the unknown, but the melody haunted them, growing ever close. What would it take to silence it for good? Would they have to face their fears, again? The path ahead promised either salvation or despair, and with every beat of her heart, the world around them twisted more. Mommy. Daniel's voice pierced through the chaos, trembling on the edge of panic. Keep running. But as they plunged deeper into the dark, the shadows whispered once more, echoing through the trees soft and deadly. Everything you love will pay the price. What was waiting in the dark, ready to reclaim them? Would this really be their escape? Or a step closer to doom? Branches whipped at their faces as they tore through the dark forest, the chill deepening around them. Sarah's breath came in frantic gasps, matched by the rising thrum of her heart, a beat that echoed the terror swelling in her chest. Is it gone? Rebecca cried, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting the shadows to leap out from behind the trees. The haunting melody had ceased, but the laughter lingered like a death knell in the air. I don't know. Sarah panted, forcing her legs to move faster, pushing her body beyond its limits, each step a release of desperate adrenaline. Daniel stumbled behind her, his small feet barely keeping pace. Mommy, I'm tired. No. You can't stop. Her voice was firm, but inside her, panic twisted like a knife. They had escaped the house, but what if this forest was its twin, a world that held its own horrors? They reached a clearing, the moonlight illuminating an ancient well, its stones moss-covered and slick. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. The well felt like an eye, watching, waiting to swallow them whole. "We should stop here," she said, glancing around, uncertainty gnawing at her. "Just for a moment. Catch our breath." But even as the words left her mouth, an uneasy dread settled in her stomach. It felt wrong. Mommy Daniel's voice trembled again, and she turned to see him gazing into the depths of the well, fascinated and terrified. "Don't look," Sarah urged sharply, but it was too late. He had already stepped closer, drawn by something unseen, something that called to him in a greedy whisper. "Daniel, no." But it was as if gravity had shifted. Her son leaned dangerously over the edge, and before she could reach him, a hand shot out from the darkness inside the well. Long, bony fingers grasped Daniel's wrist, cold as ice. "Daniel!" She screamed, scrambling forward, but it was too late. The hand yanked him down, a sharp gasp escaping his lips. "No!" With a surge of panic-fueled strength, Sarah lunged, grabbing Daniel's other hand as he dangled above the abyss. Rebecca screamed, clinging to her mother's leg. "Mommy, help him!" All around her, shadows throbbed with anticipation, eager to reclaim their prize. The laughter returned, a vile symphony curling out from the depths of the well, wrapping around them like a vice. "Hold on. Just hold on," Sarah shouted, terror propelling her forward. The ground felt like it was swaying beneath her feet as she desperately pulled Daniel up, but every second felt weighted by the encroaching darkness. With an explosive effort, she managed to lift him back to safety just as the fingers released. Daniel tumbled onto the ground, gasping, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I'm so scared. I don't want to go back." "Neither do I," Sarah whispered, her heart racing. A part of her wondered if the struggle was over, but shadows swirled threateningly at the edges of the clearing, and the well remained open, a dark invitation to despair. "What do we do?" Rebecca whimpered, staring at the well like it was a monstrous mouth ready to devour them. "We keep moving," Sarah said, her voice trembling but firm. Fear clung to her like a shroud, yet resolve pushed through. "The way isn't over. We must stay together." They stepped away from the well, backing into the shadows cast by the trees, each limb heavy with dread. Its pull was palpable, lingering like a ghost behind them. The way ahead seemed to fork again, the path on the left slipping deeper into darkness while the right promised a glimpse of faint light. "Which way?" Daniel asked, fear evident in his wide eyes. "Light!" Rebecca cried, her childlike instinct for safety fighting against the suffocating chill of despair that lingered. "Mommy, please," Daniel pleaded. "Okay." The light, Sarah decided, though doubt pricked at her conscience. As they continued on the path toward an uncertain hope, the laughter rose around them, growing louder, mocking their desperation. "Will it always haunt us?" Sarah whispered to herself, each step feeling like a betrayal of trust. But before she could voice her fears, a howl echoed through the trees, a sound so visceral that it burst through the veil of silence. The oppressive atmosphere thickened. Something was hunting them. "Run!" Sarah shouted as something black lunged through the underbrush toward them. The world fell away into chaos, the sound of pounding feet, shouts, and the echoes of laughter roiling into a spiraling abyss that felt more real than anything they had faced so far. What if the laughter wasn't just in their heads? What if this chase led them to something worse than darkness? As they sprinted for their lives, the shadows converged, thicker than before. Was it a trap, or had they simply awakened a monster? "Faster!" she urged, but her own heart was losing its rhythm, fear and uncertainty pulling them into a dance of despair. Could they outrun the darkness? Would they truly escape? Or was the real horror yet to reveal itself? Branches cracked and rustled around them as they tore down the path toward the faint light, shadows clawing at their heels. The weight of the darkness pressed against Sarah, thick and suffocating, sending panic spiraling through her veins. "It's coming!" Rebecca screamed, her small voice straining against the howling wind. "There! Sarah pointed, spotting a glimmer up ahead, but each step felt like dragging chains made of terror and despair. The light was real, but it flickered uncertainly, like a candle on the verge of blowing out. "Mommy, I can't." Daniel was stumbling again, his legs shaking. Fear flooded Sarah's heart. "Just a bit further, I promise," she encouraged, but as she glanced back, what she saw twisted her gut. A tall figure loomed in the shadows, its face obscured but its eyes glowing like molten coals flickered with predatory hunger. "Run!" she urged again, now shoving Daniel forward as she felt that dreadful presence close in. They pressed on toward the light, each step a frantic lunge through darkened air that seemed to throb and pulse. The trees around them grew taller, hollower, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers. The wind moaned a tortured lament, shrieking through the forest with a despair that matched her own. "Where are we?" Rebecca sobbed, fear spilling from her and latching onto Sarah. "It doesn't matter," Sarah shouted, gritting her teeth as she pushed on. "We just need to reach the light." But as the flicker grew closer, so did the figure behind them, its form shifting like smoke, an entity of darkness and malice that sought to consume them whole. "Mommy," Daniel's voice trailed, faltering. "Don't look back." Her own command felt hollow as she forced her legs to keep pumping, but the terror that pulsed behind them grew thick enough to taste. Then, the light burst forth, breaking through the trees. They burst into another clearing, and Sarah's breath caught. It was a graveyard. Stone tombs rose from the earth, bathed in moonlight, the shadows casting gloom that made each stone look alive, eyes staring down at them. "Why here?" Rebecca whimpered, tugging at Sarah's hand, her fingers clammy and cold. "Keep moving," Sarah pleaded, but her heart sank. This wasn't a sanctuary, it was a trap. Suddenly, a chilling laughter erupted again from within the graves, a cackling echo that mocked their presence and rekindled that awful melody. The walls of darkness constricted around them, pressing in as the wind howled warnings of pending doom. "Where is it?" Daniel's voice quivered as he turned his head, eyes wide with terror. "Don't look." Sarah thrust her body against him, feeling the weight of fear mantle each of them like a shroud. But the world spun. They were enclosed, the path behind them swallowed by shadow. There's nowhere to run. Rebecca cried, her voice cracking, and at that moment, the figure emerged, a mass of swirling black, its features finally taking shape. A ghastly grin stretched across its face, teeth sharp as knives glinting in the moonlight. The darkness swirled with a life of its own, tendrils creeping forward, coiling around her feet like vipers, ready to strike. "Mommy!" Daniel screamed, his little body trembling as Sarah realized they were trapped. The graves stood silent yet heavy in this ghastly standoff, shadows alive with malice. "How do we escape?" Sarah shouted into the night, her heart racing, each beat a drum of despair as the laughter crescendoed, and just as the figure lunged forward, time snapped. The earth trembled beneath them, and a soft whisper wafted through the air like smoke. It called to her, soft yet horrifying, as if it knew their deepest fears. Run, would they find an escape? Or had they stumbled onto a domain where hope ceased to exist altogether? The chilling laughter erupted anew, echoing through the graves as fear spiraled in her chest. There was no certainty now, only the overwhelming pull of the darkness, and yet the light flickered, a heartbeat away. Sarah's mind raced as the figure lunged toward them, its eyes gleaming with malice. The shadows twisted and writhed like a live serpent, hungry and thirsting for despair. Tightening her grip on Daniel and Rebecca, she pulled them close, instinctively shielding them from the horror that lurked just beyond her reach, but this time, something inside her snapped. It was as if the fear had solidified into a bolt of heated energy coursing through her veins. "We don't have to be afraid," she shouted, projecting her voice over the cacophony of madness that surrounded them. And as she spoke, an unexpected strength surged through her, the ferocity of a mother's love ignited. "No!" The darkness hissed, recoiling slightly, its shape wavering as her defiance radiated like a beacon. "You think you can resist? Watch us." Sarah replied, finding the courage hidden deep within. She motioned her children forward. "Stay close to me. We will fight back together." With every step they took, they drew strength from each other. They stood united against the entity that threatened to pull them under. "Stop!" Sarah shouted, her voice breaking through the shadows that lingered, cloaked in thick terror. "You won't take my children." The creature hesitated, caught off guard by her conviction. It blinked, uncertainty swirling in its depths. "You can't escape who you are," it snarled, its voice a blend of temptation and contempt, clawing at Sarah's insecurities. "No. I refuse to accept that." She shouted as memories flickered through her mind: love, laughter, the warmth of family. Each positive thought burned away the creeping darkness. Suddenly, the flickering light from the graveyard pulsed brighter, illuminating the haunting faces within the stone tombs, etched with anguish but also love. "You must face it, Sarah," one whispered, its soft voice rising above the turmoil. "You have the strength to break its hold." The creature roared, its shadows lunging, but Sarah pressed on, her heart blazing. "Our past does not define us," she screamed, sorrow and rage intermingling in a fierce crescendo. "We will shape our future." With a surge of energy, they charged into the darkness, holding on tightly to each other. Every step became a reclamation of their strength. The shadows recoiled as if burned by their unity, flickering and dimming in the presence of their collective love. "No. This cannot be." The entity shrieked, and just at that moment, Sarah spotted a path around the graveyard, a narrow escape beckoning beyond the barriers of darkness. "Run!" she commanded, and they bolted forward together, heartbeats synchronized. The shadows lunged, but their grip weakened with every determined step they took toward the light. The path opened up before them, the edge of the darkness receding more and more with each stride. Sarah's breath came heavy but resolute. "We're almost there," she called, her voice empowering, pushing them through the uncertainty. Suddenly, they broke through a glowing barrier. The shadows cascaded like waves against it, but they couldn't penetrate the warmth. The entity howled in rage, its form twisting and contorting, desperately trying to reclaim its hold. "We're free!" Daniel cheered, even as he clung to Rebecca, their previous fear transforming into exhilaration. Sarah breathed deeply, relief washing over her, filling the crevices the shadows had carved within her heart. But as they stood on the threshold of the light, a shaky whisper floated back at them: "Remember, Sarah, I'll always be watching." The words echoed hauntingly, but Sarah held on tight to her children. Fear had once gripped her life, but now hope, tenacity, and love enveloped them. "Let us go home," she said, determination blazing in her eyes. They stepped into the brilliance together, the light enveloping them like sunshine breaking free after a storm. As they materialized back into the world, the storm had calmed. Rain fell gently, creating a soothing rhythm against the ground. The streets were eerily quiet yet peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos that had clung to their previous reality. "Will it come back?" Rebecca asked, her voice small yet hopeful. "No," Sarah replied, looking at her children with fierce love. "It's gone for good. We faced it, and we won." Holding their hands, she led them home, the sun peeking through the clouds, a symbol of renewal. Together, they would heal, rediscover joy, and transform the shadows of the past into gentle memories. As Sarah entered the familiar warmth of her home, she felt free, liberated from the grips of fear. They were together, bonded by trials, with a new chapter ahead. Now, you need to be part of this journey too. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on the next thrilling stories that will keep you on the edge. It's crucial. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm and keep us thriving. Flood the comments section with your heartfelt reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible conclusion. Only true fans understand the power of supporting us through these actions.